It is our pleasure to be joined by a man who he works and writes for The Athletic. He is the host of the Down to Dunk podcast, which is an absolute go-to for any OKC Thunder fan. And he hosts like 15 other podcasts. Andrew Schlecht's in the house. What's going on, man? You're a busy guy. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, I was glad to. I was really excited whenever you asked me. Yeah, it's an insane time. I mean, I'm just on podcasts or editing podcasts or writing all day. I've been grinding since about 9 a.m. So let's just keep this going. It's the best time of the year.
It's got to be difficult. The NBA is always one of the drafts that has so many different moving parts.
Yeah.
And I don't know if some years are easier than others, but I mean, it's so hard to get a grasp on sometimes right up until the moment that the first pick's taken.
This is a tough one in particular because there's not a clear number one. And then once you kind of get past 4, it's really beauty in the eye of the beholder kind of situation, because there's a lot of guys in that range that are about the same level of talent, but they do so many different things and they play different positions. And it's going to be a really fun night. It's going to be a fun NBA draft for sure.
So before we kind of get into what the Thunder may do with these first round picks, you've sat in on a lot of these interviews with the prospects when they've had media availability. And what is up with all these kids being grown up Thunder fans or saying they want to come to OKC? Like, are we cool now? Is Oklahoma City cool? What is happening, man?
This is the Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant effect, right? We forget these were kids whenever Russ and KD were at the height of their powers. Now, there's some unique stories out there with some of these guys. Like Jeremy Sohan was a Thunder fan in part because he was born in Oklahoma, and the first NBA game he ever saw happened in London when the Thunder went over there and played one year. They just played like that one-off game over there. And so that was a part of his story. But then you just have like the other random guys that like Johnny Davis grew up like just loving the Thunder, just like this random kid from Wisconsin, but it's just because of Russ and KD. And it's really weird. And it makes me feel really old to think about like that kind of stuff coming full circle.
With the NFL, anytime you ask a player about where they'd like to get drafted, it's like, you're not getting an answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's anywhere. You may be able to pry out of them who they were a fan of whenever they're growing up or recently, or maybe a scheme set that matches up maybe well with their talents, but it's really hard to pry it out of anyone. Is it the same thing with the NBA?
Yeah. I mean, you're not getting a lot of anything out of these guys right now. The interviews are only for guys in different markets asking the players if they've worked out for their team. And that's what they're for. Guys that are trying to get stuff for stories. It's like, come on, man. Like, no, you're not getting a story out of this. Like, you should just stop. Because you're just like, did you work out for the team? Some of the guys are just flat out unwilling to say who they worked out for. I'm like, well, that's a Thunder guy right there. But you can get them to talk a little bit about what the workouts were like. And that's about it. And then you can like see like a glimmer of what their personality is like some. And really the guys that are really good, you can get a really good feel for that. And the guys that are really bad, you're like, oh gosh, like this is really awkward. They've had no media training. They don't know how to answer our questions. And this is just outright awkward. So there's been a few of those, but most of these kids are actually really good.
So it's clear that this is viewed as a 3-man draft right at the top. Now, yeah. I think this draft has quite a bit of depth when you talk to people that are studying this closely like yourself. But Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, out of those 3 guys, who's your guy, right? Because I know with how involved you are, covering the draft and studying these prospects, you've got a favorite guy. Out of those 3 guys, who's yours?
It's Chet. He's definitely my favorite prospect. He's the weirdest prospect in a long time. And to me, if you're going to swing for the fences with a prospect, they better be different in some way. Because if you think about the guys that have come in and changed the league, I mean, a lot of guys in the past have been like, oh, well, they're going to be the next Michael Jordan. Like, when did that ever actually work? There was never like a next this guy. The guys that came in and changed the league were just so different. I think about like Steph Curry. When Steph Curry came into the league, people didn't know what to do with Steph. They were like, oh, he's this little shooter that's not really a point guard, and he's not really going to help you get into offense, but he shoots it well. Is he just like super Eddie House? Like, what is that what he is? Like, people didn't know. And
Super Eddie House.
And then you think about Giannis. Well, Giannis was like unknown for a lot of reasons, but even like the first like couple of years of him being in the league, people are like, well, if he doesn't shoot the three, then things aren't going to work out for him. Like, the dude's got a ring and he's still not very good at shooting, because people didn't know what to do with that style of player. Like, well, maybe he can be Kevin Durant. Well, no one can be Kevin Durant. Like, everybody stopped trying to compare people to Kevin Durant. No one's going to be Kevin Durant. So I think Chet's the most different out of all these guys. I think you can find guys that are similar to Jabari, similar to Paolo, but Chet's this 7-footer who is going to be one of the best rim protectors in the league. He was one of the best players in transition in college basketball last year. And that wasn't just, grabbing the ball and going and dunking it. I mean, he would pull up from three in transition. And then it's so hard to imagine what he's going to be at the NBA level as an offensive player, just because he didn't get a ton of opportunities. Like, that was Drew Timmy's team, and Drew ran everything through him. And so with Chet, you wonder what it will look like in the half court if he does end up on the Thunder. But I think he's got the potential to shoot from three. He has incredible touch. He shot like 80% at the rim, which guys don't do that. And I know people are worried about the biggest thing is if he just looked quasi normal, we're not having these conversations. Like, he's the number one pick. But the fact that he just looks goofy, people don't know. People are just like, I don't know. Look at him. Just look at him. He can't be the first pick. We can't put him on an NBA court. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, to me, that's the biggest hurdle for everybody. I think people see him and they're like, man, Sean Bradley will kind of look weird too. Maybe he's Sean Bradley. It's like, well, that's not a good comp. Well, Kristaps Porzingis, he's white, blocks shots, and shoots threes. He's got to be just Kristaps. Like, well, no, that's another bad comp. The hardest thing for people is imagining what a guy who doesn't have a good comp is going to be in the NBA and then making them the number one pick. It was easier with Zion because he was just a monster. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, look at that guy. He's like this physical freak that's 260 pounds and can jump out of the gym. But Chet, he's this skinny, white American kid that has one of the most unique skill sets ever. And he looks funny. He doesn't do himself any favors. He got on the Zoom with like his hair puffed out like all the way. It's like, man, you're just leaning into it, aren't you? Like, it's so to me, I just think if he had just a normal look about him, we're just talking about him as the number one pick, period. But Jabari looks the part, Paolo looks the part, so it's easier for people to picture what they're going to be in the league.
I keep seeing it, I keep hearing it, I keep reading it, that Chet is a good rim protector, will be a good rim protector in the NBA. I just can't see it. There's not another rim protector that looks like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to block shots in college basketball. It's another thing to be in the paint, blocking shots, being a rim protector in the NBA. That's where the animals play. And, I don't know. I just, am I crazy for looking at it and saying, I don't know. That looks like a guy that's going to hang around the 3-point line a little bit more than it is hanging around the rim, protecting guys driving to the hole.
I think I would agree with you if his personality if he wasn't so driven and like willing to prove to people that he can do more, because he did it a ton at Gonzaga, where he wanted to be around the bucket just because he could finish everything around the basket, because his arms are longer than just about everybody's. He also has really learned how to create a wide base to give himself some more strength. Like, he's not weak. He's really skinny, but he's not weak. And he figured out ways to leverage his lower body so that he just didn't get pummeled every time. I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people will point to like the first matchup with Paolo Banchero and be like, he just got destroyed. Paolo got him once. And then he tried that on Chet a few other times and couldn't make it happen. I mean, he's got 60 pounds plus on him. And Chet figured out what he wanted to do, and he wouldn't let him do it the rest of the night. But people won't show you those clips. People will show you the clips of Paolo dunking on him and moving him out of the way. But people won't show you whenever Chet figured it out that Chet stopped him on multiple occasions, him trying to do the same thing. So to me, and also NBA defenses, it's rarely, especially in the post, a one-on-one game. It's a team-oriented defense. And the Thunder Mark Daigneault did a really good job with the defense last year. And they had maybe one good individual defender on the team. And for portions of last season, they were in the top half of the league on defense. Like, they had no business being the top half of the league on the defense. They didn't have any good rim protectors. They just had a good defensive scheme and some decent athletes and guys that are willing to play. And Chet, I think you plug him in there. I think you can compare him a little bit to like what Rudy Gobert was when he came into the NBA. Super skinny, guys would drive right at him. And he proved to them over and over again, like, you shouldn't do that because I'm going to block your shot. And Rudy, multi-time defensive player of the year. I think that body type is going to be similar. Like, Rudy's not giant. He's still pretty skinny. And, part of the reason that the Thunder lost in the first round a few years ago is because Rudy deterred Russ from going to the rim, and I think that Chet's going to be similar. It's going to take some time. There's no doubt. And the Thunder probably almost prefer it that way, that this next guy is going to take some time, because I think they would like to get another high draft pick next year. However, I do think that he's got the highest ceiling amongst all these guys just because he has such a unique skill set that could really blossom into something that we have really never seen before.
Do you anticipate Chet being the pick at number 2?
I do. Yes. Yeah, I do. I would be surprised if they went in another direction.
You look at those three guys, right? Jabari, Chet, and Paolo. Is there any chance Sam Presti pulls some sort of ultimate Sam Presti guy and selects someone other than those three guys? And if he did something like that, who may be kind of that wild card?
I mean, the only guy that you could take outside of those three is Jaden Ivey. I mean, 6'4", fast as lightning, can get to the rim whenever he wants, has a pretty good mid-range game, a developing outside shot, but the speed and athleticism, you can't teach that, and you can't just go get that. So there's a chance. There's been some smoke on the Thunder really liking him. I don't know if they like him as like their first pick or if they like him as a guy that they would go get with a bunch of assets at 4. I'm not really sure, but he would be the guy. I have a really hard time believing that that's going to happen, though, because you look at what happened after the All-Star break, and there was a big ordeal about Shea and Giddey and who's going to have the ball and who's the primary ball handler. Well, Mark told the media that Giddey's going to be handling the ball more. And, Shea came out and said, well, that's not my plan A. And it was like this whole big deal about who's going to have the ball, who's going to have it most of the time, what's going to happen here or there. It's really the only time that I've seen Shea even have ruffled feathers at all, since he's been here. It was like, you know what, I would rather it just be me, is what he was telling us. And then you're going to add another guard that needs the ball. I mean, a lot of people are like, well, Jaden Ivey's going to play off the ball. I really don't think Jaden Ivey's going to play off the ball in the NBA. I mean, if you look at the play types that he had, the two most common play types that he had at Purdue were pick and roll ball handler and transition. In both cases, he's got the basketball in his hands. And I think that totals up to 50% of what he was doing at Purdue. So to say like, oh, he'll just be off the ball. Well, he really wasn't very effective off the ball at Purdue last year. He's not that great of a shooter. So you're going to put him on Oklahoma City. To me, I don't know if you can start those three together. I don't know really how that works. To me, if they took Jaden Ivey, it would be they trade down to 4. They pick up a 2023 first round pick that is either like top 1 protected or unprotected. And you signal to the fan base, we value the 23 draft more than we do any of these guys. and we're not going to be very good next year because we're giving Mark Daigneault the biggest headache that a coach could ever have. And like, we're giving him these three young guys that are hungry, want to prove that they're the guy, and we're going to make him figure it out, So I have a hard time believing that they're going to do that, because the situation that they have now is like, you've got two really good guards, you've got some other pieces developing around them, and you have virtually no talented big men. And this is a draft with talented big men at the top. It would just be strange to me if that's the direction that you go.
I want to go back to Chet for a second, which I'll just tell you, it's the only one guy that I want them to draft, because I'm not really sure, and I think it is just interesting to watch, And you said that maybe they want a bit of a project. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe something that's not just instant, because you like to possibly be in a similar spot next year.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the timeline? Because I know these days, like sorry that I compare everything to the NFL, but it wasn't very long ago that whenever you took a rookie quarterback in the first round, the expectation was sit a year or two until you're ready and then take over. Well, that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not playing right away, it's almost a disaster, and everyone looks at the pick like it was a mistake. So what is the timeline for you? Like what is acceptable, and the player that you see, like the potential there, how long down the road do you think it is until, and maybe it's an impossible question, but how long until maybe that player that you are imagining could actually be the guy we're watching?
Yeah. To your last question, I think it'd probably be 2 or 3 years before you start really seeing what he can do. I mean, these guys get in the weight room and you're going to see pretty quick what they're going to become. The Thunder are very good about that. This guy's going to be fully focused on basketball only while he's here. And so I don't think it's going to take like 5, 6, 7 years. I think we're probably talking like 2 or 3 years before you're like, oh, okay, I can see it now. And then as far as the timeline goes, I think it's laid out pretty simply. They've got some money on the books. They've got a little bit of space that they can use up before the draft. If they don't use it, it's going to pretty much be gone, because Shai's extension is going to kick in. They're going to draft the second pick, which is going to eat up about $10 million in space. So they could use some of that now and absorb a couple more contracts. The Knicks is a team that people are talking about right now, that the Thunder could take a couple contracts for them. But then after the season's over next year, the Kemba Walker deal is gone. Derek Favors deal is gone. They're going to have a boatload of cap space. They're going to have their third lottery pick in place. And there's a new collective bargaining agreement that's going to be signed in the summer of 2023. It could be a lockout, maybe not. I don't know. But that to me is that above everything. And I think they actually lined up the cap space and the flexibility to be with the new collective bargaining agreement so that they can know the rules they're playing with. If you look back at the first iteration of the Thunder, they got screwed over by the league over and over again, because the league was making new rules as they were trying to build their team. Kevin Durant's contract got changed overnight without them even knowing it. And like instantly they're paying Kevin Durant more money. Like, okay, what's going on here? The rule that they enacted after Kevin Durant left was that you could extend them at a more reasonable amount. Well, that didn't happen until after Kevin left, so that kind of screwed them over. There were just a lot of things along the way. They didn't smooth the cap, which allowed Golden State to get Kevin Durant. So I think if you're Sam, you kind of are beating your head against the wall. Like, okay, like every single time these rules are being changed, but we're the ones that are losing. So I think if you're Sam, you look at it and say, I'm not making another move to make this team a championship contender until I know what the rules are. And so if he can understand what the rules are after they make a new CBA in 2023, then I think it's more favorable to take 5 first-round picks and trade it for player X, and then try to move this team forward with more pace. But until then, I just don't know that there's a reason to go out and do anything like that.
What he's telling you, Ted, is we're going to sit through another season of pain. Is what he's telling you, and
get ready.
Okay, another tough subject. Lu Dort.
Mm-hmm.
Some rumors are out there, right? Whether it's Dort in 12 to move up to go get a player.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Thunder want to pay him long term? So I guess my question for you is simple. After Thursday night, is Lu Dort a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I think so. I think you look at the rumors that are out there. It's like Lu Dort in 12 for 4. Well, if you're a Kings fan, if that's the deal they do, I think you're livid. I think that's a horrible deal. I think if you're Portland as well, Portland's got 2 small guards that they're going to start. You think you want to add Lu Dort to that team? Now, they just traded for Jeremy Grant. I don't think so. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Is that the player that you're going to add to your team that's going to make you a Western Conference contender? Like, I just don't think so. So I think he probably is on the team after this. I also think a lot of this really depends on the negotiations that are happening behind the scenes. Is Lu Dort's agent pushing for $20 million? If he is, then maybe you are just trying to find a landing spot for him somewhere else with a team that would be willing to pay him that much money. If he's asking for 15 and he's just like, listen, I want just a reasonable deal that can keep me here. I want to play with Shea. I want to play with the franchise that gave me a chance. Lou was actually a Thunder fan growing up too. So I think that there may be a reason for him to stick around and him wanting to. So really, to me, it's more about those negotiations than anything, because they can extend him this summer. They can decline his option and then extend him this summer, or they can pick up his option, have another really cheap year of Lu Dort, and then try to give him a new contract when he's an unrestricted free agent next summer. I think you can make the case for both, because they're going to have so much cap space. It's not really going to matter if they sign him to like a 3-year, $45 million contract. And then I think that they will know if they can bring him back as an unrestricted free agent next summer too. I don't think they would be afraid to do that, because that would allow them the most flexibility with regards to team building next summer. That's kind of what I've been predicting all along, is that they'll let him get to unrestricted free agency and still bring him back. That's what I think is probably the most likely thing. But if they can lock him up on a cheaper deal, I think they'll do it. And if he is holding out and saying like, I want to be an unrestricted free agent now, I want as much as you'll give me, I think they'll say, okay, we'll send you to the Wizards or whatever.
What's the flip side of that? If you're looking at it as a reason to make that move and move up, what would that be? Would it be possibly that, we have a chance at a developmental guy that maybe takes a little bit longer and helps us be bad next year, right? And we've got another developmental guy, and you stay young. Would that be the thinking there, that if you wanted to move up?
I think the thought would be, if you have Dort and 12 and even an additional asset or whatever it would cost to move up, that you just think that whoever is at 6 or 7 or 8 is just going to be a star. That to me is why you would do it. I don't know that you would do it just because. I don't know that the draft is all that different at 7 than it is at 12. I think you could probably get a player that's just as good at 12 as you could at 8. And so I wouldn't do the deal. I just don't think that it's going to be worth it at the end of the day. However, it's all about like Sam's evaluations on these guys. Like, he has more information than any of us do. And if he thinks that like Jalen Duren is going to be a stud, then he'll go get him if he can. The guy that everybody wants to talk about, Shaedon Sharpe, I don't know if he's going to be any good in the NBA. I have no clue. But if Sam has enough information, and he might.
How do you not know? He played so much in college.
It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of certainty about Shaedon Sharpe. And I'm like, you just don't know what you're talking about, because no one has any certainty on Shaedon Sharpe unless you're an NBA exec and you've actually sat down and talked to him. But yeah, maybe it's that guy. I mean, that's a big time swing, because if he is as good as some of the people around him think he is, then he could be a star, or he could be Gerald Green 2.0. Like, I don't know.
If they can't move up from 12, who do you think's in play there? Right, that's kind of the territory. When you look at all these mocks and these evaluations, like your AJ Griffins, your Jeremy Sohans, Johnny Davis, those type of guys. Who do you think kind of fits the Thunder mold that could be available at 12?
I think Sohan fits pretty well. He's real skilled on the offensive end as far as passing and ball handling goes for a big. And he's going to be one of the better defenders in this draft. I mean, if you can get him and Chet as like this tandem, I mean, that's the foundation of your defense for the next decade. I mean, it would be really, really special if you could put those guys together. Now, Jeremy's going to have to shoot the ball. He's going to have to learn how to shoot the ball from the corner in particular. But I don't worry too much about him just because he knows how to stay involved in the offense. I mean, at Baylor, he wasn't just parked in the corner. Like, we don't know what to do with you. You're so bad on offense. He's not Andre Robertson. He's not Thabo Sefolosha. He's a guy who likes to be involved in the action. He likes to do a lot of the same stuff that Draymond does, where he's kind of at the nail and can distribute from there. You're going to have to get a shooter on the wing with that crew. I mean, that's the deal, is that if you draft Jeremy, you draft Chet, you are going to have to find a lights out shooter to play the three, because otherwise you're going to have trouble creating space on the offensive end. So I think that he's in play. A lot of people like Ousmane Dieng. He played for the New Zealand Breakers. He's 19 years old. He's 6'10". He's an interesting player. A lot of people describe him as raw, which I think a lot of people tend to think raw means athletic and underdeveloped as a skilled player, but he's not. He's not that athletic. He's a little bit like Nicholas Batum, I guess, would be maybe the best comp that I can think of for him, where he's kind of this bigger ball handler that can distribute a little bit. He's a developing shooter. He shot the ball better at the end of the season there. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he is a long-term project. I think he's a really big risk at that spot. However, he was the most boring player I've ever talked to, so I'm sure that Sam Presti loves him. So those guys are definitely in play. I think if Shaedon Sharpe fell to 12, I think it's a worthwhile risk. I don't know that they would take Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. I love Johnny Davis. I think that dude is just a baller. He competes at such a high level. Defensively, he's just a maniac. And then I think he's going to be able to hit a three off ball. I think he can handle in a pinch. I think he can attack a closeout. And to me, he's just a winner. Like, I just love that guy. I don't know that they take him because they don't really need a guard. But to me, if he's there, I mean, that would be one of my guys. And he was in a Taco Bell commercial, which that's pretty cool.
He sure was. Landed that before he even got drafted. That's pretty
I know.
impressive. That's a great representation.
I know. How many guys do you think they called before they got to a yes from Johnny Davis? Like, we want to do an NBA draft commercial. Who are we going to call?
Guys from Duke.
Yeah.
Oh, they don't want to do it? Carolina, Gonzaga. No. Yeah, Wisconsin. That
right. The Wisconsin guy said yes. All right. Bring him in.
All right. Well, not necessarily Thunder centric, but I guess it could be. What are the big things that are just kind of rumors at this point that could happen on draft night? Big names, big moves up, big moves back. Just anything out there that you're hearing that would be like a wow moment on draft night?
So, I mean, the Hawks are definitely trying to do stuff. They did not like the way their season ended last year. They did not like the way their season went, period. John Collins is a big part of that. John Collins is going to be traded, whether it's on draft night, I don't know, but he will be traded this summer. That's going to happen. And I think that they would like to package John Collins in 16 to move up. Now, that is definitely not a Thunder related rumor. The Thunder are not going to try to acquire John Collins. Although there is like a reasonable fit there with the team. I just don't think they're going to do that. So, but that's something to watch. Certainly. You have a team like Charlotte who's got 13 and 15. They want a big man. I don't know if I think they want Jalen Duren, who may or may not be there at 13. So you could see them move 13 and 15 up to 10 or up to 9. I think that that's something to watch for. New Orleans has a few guys circled. They really want Dyson Daniels. I think they really want Ben Mathurin out of Arizona. And if both those guys are gone, which I think is very possible, you could see them trade back. I think that is the most likely trade up team with the Thunder is New Orleans, where they could make some kind of deal that is maybe future asset based, or I don't know what player they'd want from the Thunder, but I think that there'd be a conversation there about that for the Thunder to move up to 8 to take whoever they like there. Those are definitely things. And then the Knicks are desperately trying to get cap space. Whether or not they're willing to use 11 to acquire cap space, I don't know. So this is where the Thunder could come into play, where they just take Evan Fournier off their hands and maybe they could get 11 or some kind of future pick. I mean, honestly, if you can get any future pick that belongs to the Knicks, you're doing pretty good. So I would expect it to be a future pick if that does happen and not be 11. But that's something to watch for as well. I think there could be some activity. And then the Kings are going to be the Kings. They're going to do something dumb. I don't know if that's taking the wrong guy. I don't know if that's going to be trading out, but the Kings are going to perpetually be the Kings.
That's a tremendous way of putting it. Andrew, I know you're extremely busy right now, man. You've been on everything that I've been listening to, but thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. And enjoy draft night, man. The work is almost over.
That's right. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun. If you live in Oklahoma City, you should come join us at Fassler Hall in downtown OKC from 6 to 10. It's going to be an absolute blast.
This will be the first time since Steven Adams was drafted that I will have heard of a player that we're taking. This is the first time. It's been a while. It's going to be fun. Honestly, this year and next year should be like the foundation of the next Thunder team. And so it's kind of cool to make some kind of memory with regards to what they do. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's hope it goes well. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thanks, fellas.